Welcome back to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willert, and I'm sitting here with Pastor Mike Wigglesworth, and we are in studio, and we have a fantastic guest host. He is back. Pastor Stephen Mannion is in the studio with us today. How you guys
doing? Ratings are going to skyrocket for this episode.
It's either skyrocket or people just start deleting
Nothing to do with
podcast.
our guest.
Yeah,
somebody left a rating on Apple Podcasts and said, "Please bring Stephen back." And I think his
Stephen. I'm pretty sure you left that, Stephen.
Stephen was the guy that actually left the review.
I can
or
neither
somebody with the
confirm nor
name
deny.
Pastor Stephen.
But we have a great podcast for you today. But to introduce our guest that we have, I'm going to toss it over to Pastor Stephen to introduce them.
So this is a very unique topic for this podcast. But so back in my college days, and actually when I was in seminary, this was what I had a friend of mine in seminary. His name is Brad, and in those days, we went and got a fart machine. And we found one that was like somewhat decent because fart machines, as we all know,
the little
it was
black
a black
one,
one, yeah. And it had a variety of sounds. And we, like this was before YouTube. We would go, the two of us, and just go to Borders bookstore and just pretend we were farting on people just for the entertainment of the other one watching. We take turns.
It's always a bookstore too,
and we go to the mall and do this. So we would entertain ourselves. If we would have recorded this, we might have been the Jack Vale of this world. But I didn't think of recording it. So our guest today is Jack Vale. He has a YouTube channel just under Jack Vale. A large YouTube channel, I think 1.7 something million subscribers. Jack, it's great to have you with us today. And if you wouldn't mind, just sharing like what you do in your channel about the pooter, and then I do want to ask you about your faith and your testimony just to start, if that's okay with you guys.
Absolutely, sounds great.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. I feel like this is going to be a really fun conversation. With a lot of laughs, probably.
Yeah.
Good to know your little background there. Of you guys doing this stuff with your friends, before YouTube and everything. I was kind of the same way. I've been doing this for about 15 years. On YouTube anyway. A lot longer before that. But I never would have thought in a million years that beginning in 2007 or 8, you could do this full time and, make money from it, support your family with it.
By farting.
Every guy's dream.
The world,
right.
Yeah, the world has changed a lot, So yeah, I mean, I was like you, I was always kind of messing around with my friends, and this was the one thing to me that was always funny that you could agree on. Didn't really matter so much your background, your ethnicity, where you're from. It didn't matter. Everybody kind of collectively, for the most part, agreed that an unexpected fart sound was funny, and everybody would always laugh. And I thought, if I could do this for a living, that would be a pretty amazing thing.
And you found a way.
And then, and thanks to YouTube, it did. It worked out. So I started uploading videos on YouTube in about 2007 and 8, and by 2009 I was doing it full time, and I was able to just only do that. And I think the videos really started to resonate with people because so many people were having a bad day, and they would come home and they would start looking on YouTube, and they would see these funny reactions from people, and such silly humor that I think it really helped people to kind of get them out of their funk sometimes, whatever was going on. And that's what I loved about it. And I just thought, man, if I could do this forever, like this, it would make me happy. So I'm still doing it.
Yeah. One of the videos that I found out you were Christian, I suspected you were, because you have clean language. And you can just kind of tell, can't you, sometimes with people?
Yeah.
But that was the video. I actually sent this video to these guys. The one where you were, where the woman was complaining about her back pain, and you were showing her, if you just squeeze right here, you can squeeze out a little toot. And she was like,
pressure.
wow.
Release that pressure.
Yeah, release that pressure. She's like, wow, how did you do that? And she was such a sweetheart, and was like, this is a good sport about it. And then she tried it, and Jack leaned forward and squeezed the pooter, and he goes, there, you just did it. And she's like,
exactly.
she was like, did I? Anyways, and the conversation went on where she shared how she's disabled and her back and she's in constant pain and and I can't remember how, but you eventually said to her, are you a believer? And she said, yeah, I am. And then you asked her if you could pray with her, and you prayed on your channel, which I was impressed by, because you just know that I'm sure some of your followers weren't too thrilled about that, because there's always some people who don't like that kind of stuff. So that's when I knew for sure that you were a Christian. So can you share with us about your testimony? It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just about your walk with Christ.
Yeah, to elaborate on that particular video, you never know what you're going to get. You never know who you're going to talk to. And I saw this lady, and it was just nothing more than an opportunity to make her laugh like I do with everybody. And when she started to get into some of that serious stuff, I didn't realize how serious it was. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, she's going into the doctor for some gastral thing or, whatever. I was like, this is perfect. Like, I'm at the right place at the right time, So I started lightly just kind of having fun with the situation and stuff. And it was great. And I got a good reaction out of her. And then it went deep really, really quick. Mm-hmm. And I think if I remember the video, it's been a few years ago, but I think I remember her laughing and having a really good time and talking about laughter, but then talking about how she had just lost her son to suicide. I think her husband was in the hospital. There's a lot of stuff going on in her life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but when those things happen, you don't know how do you turn something funny? How do you turn something serious into something funny? And I don't know, it seems like a very natural and organic way to share your faith in God with people, because everybody enjoys laughter. And if you can make people laugh, you seems like they come down from the place where they were, and they just kind of open up a little bit more. Have you ever noticed how socially awkward people are in stores? Mm-hmm, yeah. It cracked me up. These days, it wasn't like this 50 years ago. I know it wasn't. I wasn't around then, but barely. And now, like, you walk into a store and somebody's in an aisle. They have the whole aisle all to themselves. And here they are looking at something. If you disrupt their private little moment, they just leave the aisle sometimes. Like if you walk in looking
probably
at something,
because they see Jack Vale coming.
No, I don't think so. Oh, maybe that's part of it. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. Once my friend, we've noticed that, and especially after the pandemic, it seemed to have gotten worse with give me my bubble, give me my space. Right. And so sometimes you guys know him. Blake and I have once done it where we're just, whenever someone's looking at an item, we're just going to go grab the item that's right in front of them, even though we don't need it. And we'll put it back later just to see how amazing. Awkward it is. And sometimes we don't even need to.
It's going to be Jack's
or
next
we'll
video.
reach for the item and go, wait a minute, and then stay there for a little bit, and then go for another, and then no.
I do that all the time.
And just leave. And just it's so funny sometimes how awkward it makes people.
It is. Awesome. It is so funny it's fun to observe how people are today in public situations. Yep. And I just, I love it so much. You never know who you're talking to. And I feel like as silly as this might sound to some people, it feels kind of like this is one of the things that I was really called to do. I mean, I love being able to do something that makes people it brings them out of their space for a moment. And I can't tell you how, most of the time I don't put that stuff on video, but it happens to me all the time. And I just, usually I'll cut it out of the video or whatever. But it's incredible how many people will start to talk about serious stuff and really open up to you. And a lot of times they're Christians. Sometimes they're not. If they're not, I'll sometimes, pray with them or let them know that I will be praying for them. And they seem to, kind of appreciate that. And so I just, I've always kind of thought that what I do is kind of a segue to being able to share my faith with people, and I've really kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, speaking of that, as a segue, because the question popped in my head, and as an apologist, one of the things I'm concerned with is how I'm coming across when it comes to communicating, and how you hold the conversation or how you enter a conversation is extremely important for the ability to keep the conversation. So how do you suggest Christians out there to incorporate, in a sense, comedy in order to produce a more fruitful conversation about their faith? Because it doesn't necessarily lead into it, but it seems even pastors can learn from comedy in order to open up, as you stated, the congregation to desire to listen to you more. So what advice do you have to give to even younger apologists or pastors coming down the line when it comes to comedy?
Nobody has ever asked me that question. In my own experience, here's what's happened to me. I remember a couple of times people have approached me that I didn't know. I didn't know who they were. And they had come up to me and said, "Can I pray with you?" And listen, maybe everybody has their own style. I've never done that to anybody.
Right.
It puts me on the spot. I'm like, first of all, I'm a believer, so I'm always, of course,
Right.
But it also, there's that initial like, oh, do I look funny? Is everything okay? I'm kind of wondering, like, that's kind of weird.
He looks like he needs prayer. We're going to go over there real fast.
That's what I think,
He clearly has a terrible case of gas.
Maybe that's what it is. I think for me, it's talking to people. The more I talk to them and shoot the breeze with them, it just feels kind of a little bit more like a natural conversation. If you can get a conversation going with people, then you seem to be able to get them to where they're comfortable. And then you also, in that process, learn a lot about the person, and you know whether or not, or you have an idea whether or not that's going to be accepted by them.
Right.
So I always try to, I've been doing this for so long. I read people, how you were talking about how you kind of mess with people and reach for stuff. Part of that process, and you know this from doing that kind of stuff, is you're watching their facial expressions.
Yeah.
You're studying how people are moving around and stuff. And you can usually tell whether or not somebody's going to be receptive to talking to them about the Lord. So I always kind of try to open it up with a conversation and get to know them a little bit.
Okay, good, great.
Good. So I love what you're doing, and it's super courageous, especially doing this as a Christian, because Christians aren't necessarily known as being the most fun to be around. Just gonna be honest, like. I'm a pastor. I pastor some wonderful people, but
like Mike's not fun to be around at all.
No, they barely tolerate me. Just to be totally honest. But every group has their curmudgeons. So what I'm curious to know is when you have somebody who kind of pushes back on your method, like what, not just
you're
what
so
you do,
mature.
Yeah, like and every guy has like their inner middle schooler in them. I know, like every guy thinks farts are funny, and I think every human being does too.
Because they are funny, that's why.
But some Christians believe it to be
fact.
Right. But some Christians believe it to be improper to maybe use that as a means by which to, share Jesus with people. So how do you respond to somebody who pushes back on what you do?
Yeah, it's not always easy. Every once in a while, there's usually, it's about 1 to 5% of people maybe out there who have the guts to, like, they're so offended that they're like, grow up, stupid idiot, and at that point, like, I know I'm not going to be able to open up a conversation about the gospel with this person. Like, it's over right there.
Right.
So I usually say, I'm going to be honest with you. I usually say something sarcastic, and I try to make it a bigger, funny moment. I try to bring a little bit of extra comedy into it. I know I'm not going to be able to, sometimes I'll ask them, why would I want to do that? Like, and sort of embrace that I've never really quite all the way grown up. So I like doing that, but, it's hard, but I got to tell you, some of it is the demeanor in what I do. I've always tried to do my best to not be overly obnoxious or aggressively rude to people or anything like that because,
Yeah.
you know, I used to watch one of my favorite actors is Leslie Nielsen.
Naked Gun.
That's awesome.
Dude, I love the Naked Gun movies and all that so much. But he would always have a little fart maker with him in like interviews with people and stuff like that. And, you know, but he's such a likable guy. It wasn't like he was in your face, over the top, being obnoxious and rude to people. It was kind of like, he was still kind of a fun guy to be around. So I kind of took a little bit of inspiration from that. And I think as long as my style of what I do isn't threatening to people, or it doesn't feel so over the top that it's just like, oh, he's a jerk. You know, I never want people to say he's a jerk. And even that happens sometimes. But you're right, dude. I've had Christians, fellow believers, who have literally said to me, usually it's online, it's usually not in person, but they'll be like,
Right.
you call yourself a Christian and this kind of humor is not Christian, you know?
I could make a decent theological argument that Peter went, and, like, the disciples were all camping around a fire, and Peter ripped one, and Jesus and all of them laughed. Do you know how I know that? Because all children instinctively think farting's funny until they're taught it's not.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yes.
Dude, you're 100% on it.
God created us thinking farting's funny.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jesus at one point was probably like, pull my finger.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I had a question pertaining to that for you, because I've met some people who are just like, scriptures doesn't really point to comedy, right? And I see there's some comedical things. I see Jesus being sometimes hilariously sarcastic to the Pharisees and Sadducees in Scripture when he responds to them.
Yeah.
But people go like, it doesn't mention Jesus laughing or anything like that. Now, to me, that's an argument from silence.
Right.
And George MacDonald has a great saying, they don't need to mention him laughing because he always was.
Right.
And it's just like they mentioned Jesus weeping because it was abnormal for him at that point, right? And so they're like, Jesus is probably always laughing, so why point it out if it's just a thing he's doing? It's just,
And Jesus laughed.
but when you look at Scripture, I don't know about you, I see laughter in some of these things. I see sarcasm in some of these things. How do you see this comedy? Not necessarily fart comedy, but comedy in general, and laughter and joy throughout Scripture, like I do.
Yeah, I do. You know, the Bible talks about laughter and a cheerful heart and all of these things. So we do hear that laughter is important and it's good for the soul. It's good for us. It's part of our makeup. It's part of how God created us. Whether or not we have a specific, you know, example of somebody laughing, I don't know. I think that all of these, they were inspired to write what God told them to write, you know? And so this is the stuff that we're supposed to learn for salvation, to get as many people as we can around us saved and follow after what God told us to do. So it may not have been so important to, like you said, you know, maybe Jesus he laughed so much it wasn't significant enough for them to write about it. I think that's definitely possible, but there's so much about it that, I mean, there's healing qualities and just so many incredible things. There's also something about you know, you hear this unexpected sound, and God made so many funny things. It's different every single time, isn't it? And when it happens and you don't expect it, it could be high pitched, deep, long, short. I mean, there's so many things. And so when you don't expect it, it just makes everybody laugh. So I think that tells me right there that, you know, it's probably, if we're all going to be honest about it, it's something that we all share in common with each other, you know? So,
and he doesn't. By the way, I'm making it sound like all Jack does is fart comedy. He does hilarious prank calls, by the way, that are really funny. Where like Craigslist prank calls and all these different prank calls that are really funny. He does this old man voice that he's like, and I don't know how he does. After he does it, he'll start hacking, coughing after he hangs up because it's hard in his voice. And he does. You and Ed Bassmaster have done a couple compilations together, right? Ed Bassmaster. Yeah, he's a big comedian. And they do all the different skits, like, you know, prank skits where people don't know they're pranking them, obviously. And man. So he does more than just fart. That's like what he's known for. Yep.
Yeah, it's and that's always been kind of a struggle with me. I've had to kind of figure out how to not always be the fart guy, you know. So I try to start early on by incorporating a lot of the prank calls and other types of, you know, public awkward situations. You guys were just talking about some of the other awkward things that you've done with friends and stuff, you know, in stores and reaching for things. I mean, not that long ago, I started getting a little too close to people, and they might be looking at something, and I could clearly go right in the proper way in front of them to reach and grab something. But instead, I think there's a couple videos actually called getting too close to people or reaching around people or something like that. And I would go over there. There's just them, nobody near them. And I would go sneak up behind them. They don't even know I'm there, and take my hand and go over the top of their shoulder and down in a wave motion. And then they just see this hand and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just going to grab this real quick and I'm going to leave. And it's just so fun to watch people and how they react to this weird guy. And, you know, the other thing that it does is they have this one moment of their entire day that will probably never happen again. And they're going to go home and they're going to tell everybody about it.
There was this goofball at the store.
And I love those stories. You tell them for the next 20 years to your friends and family. There's this weirdo that just that just breezed my shoulder strangely in Wegmans.
Now here's the question though. Is this more for me and Steven, maybe for Ryan too? But we preach just about every Sunday. It's how do we incorporate farts into a message?
Oh, just hold a pooter in your hand, and every once in a while, give a little squeeze. By the way, Jack, make sure you tell everybody about the pooter and where they can get one, and give a little demonstration squeeze so everybody can hear it.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that for sure. You know, preachers, pastors, and youth pastors will use other videos. They've never used a fart video, but they've used other of my videos to like do it for examples and stuff in sermons. And I think it's so creative to watch, like, you know, how they do it. There's this guy, don't even know his name, but he's pretty famous on YouTube, and he does these videos where he's like walking around his studio and there's TVs everywhere. I don't know his name, but anyway, he starts to talk about whatever the message is. And he used one of my videos one time was me in a car driving through a parking lot with the window down. And I would find people and I would say, have you seen a guy here with a green hat, kind of like wearing I think he might be in a brown jacket and he's got these kinds of shoes on and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just describing them exactly to a T what they look like. And it's so funny visually. You're watching this idiot drive around and say these words to somebody, and then the visual picture is you're watching this person. It's the funniest thing ever because they're dressed, they look that you're obviously describing them, and then they just stand there on camera and go, no, I haven't seen anybody like it. I don't know. You know? And they're looking around and spinning around like this. Did you check in there over there? You know? And I remember this pastor, the video is called Oblivious and Paranoid or something like that. And this pastor, somebody sent me this link to this video, and it's really clever. And they talked about how the devil comes in and really kind of like how did he do it? It was a message about being aware at all times that Satan is right there. And sometimes he can confuse us. It was a message about confusion and all of this stuff. And he's like, look, sometimes it's right in your face. Sometimes it's right there. And we're so oblivious to it, we don't even know what he's trying to do. And so we easily get suckered into something. That's why we got to be prayed up and we got to be studied up. And I was like, dude, you came up with a pretty good message off of this dumb little video that I did, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking it was such a cool thing, but those are the biggest, it's such an honor to see some of my videos be incorporated into stuff like that. It's actually, it's kind of a dream come true. I used to want to be a pastor, or a singer when I was a kid. So, as a matter of fact, when I started my YouTube channel, I was singing actually. And People don't know that, but I was singing with, going on tour with Christian bands and stuff like that. I loved being in front of people and sharing the gospel. And so in a way, I kind of get to do that.
That's cool.
Awesome.
So I have another question for you, unless, Mike, you have one.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so as we all know, with good things, they can be turned bad, right? And that happens with comedy. A lot of days, most of the comedy that people enjoy are R-rated movies with jokes that are very inappropriate. As a Christian, what advice do you have to fellow Christians who wants to be comedians and do YouTube channels that you have put in your life to make sure your comedy doesn't cross a certain line when it comes to what is right versus wrong? Because a lot of times that gets very blurred. Yeah. And I hear a lot of Christians like, oh, this was a hilarious joke. This was a hilarious movie. And I'm like, man, to me, that's way past what I think we should understand good comedy to be and holy comedy to be. So what kind of like guardrails have you learned or put into your comedy to make sure you don't go that far?
Well, I don't know if I would be good to speak to, what maybe other people should do, but my own experience is I just remember ever since the beginning of all of this, it was important to me for my kids. I didn't ever want to have that conversation with my kids. Before YouTube, I was an actor. And I did some acting, and I've been in some movies and stuff like that. And I remember setting a precedence when I started having kids. I decided, like, I'm not ever going to be on camera, for example, kissing another woman, because I don't ever want my kids, I don't want to have to explain that.
Yeah.
It's not really me. Well, yeah, it kind of is me, but it's not really me. And I just wanted to kind of set that example. So when YouTube happened, it was more difficult. It was harder because you're always kind of wanting, as a comedian, you want to push the envelope as far as you can, but then also stay respectful. So that can be challenging. But I just kind of always set my boundaries at, am I going to be comfortable with my kids seeing this content?
Right. Yeah.
And a couple of times I screwed that up. Sometimes your intentions might be right, but you just, you're always trying to do something different and be creative. And then you look at something later that you did and you go, that wasn't the best decision, And so I had to delete a couple of videos because I'm like, I don't really like that, And they didn't have cursing or nothing like that, but they didn't come across the way that I wanted them to. And I thought, this is not going to be a good example. That's how I've always handled it, was just kind of thinking, am I going to be okay with my kids seeing this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. No, well, Jack, we want to thank you so much for your time with us today. We're about at time now, but we want to give listeners the opportunity to find out more about you. So where's the best place for them to look to find out more about Jack Vale?
There's so many places. I usually say just Google my name. But cool. If you just Google Jack Vale, you'll probably find my YouTube channel and my Facebook and all of that kind of stuff.
V-A-L-E.
Yep. Awesome. Yep. V-A-L-E. That's right.
2 C's. No, I'm just kidding.
And tell them about the pooter, Jack, in case they want to buy one of those.
Oh, the pooter. Yeah, you can buy a pooter and get a lot of laughs. I did this little thing with Compassion International. I was so happy that these guys reached out because I always wanted to do something like that. So I went to Haiti with Compassion International. And I brought
Haitian kids think farting's funny.
Yeah.
Dude. I mean, it was the first time. This was about 3 years ago. And I had a backpack. You've never seen such a big backpack, just jam-packed with pooters. And I was giving these things out. And man, these Haitian kids were cracking up laughing. And that was the big moment, I think, in my life where I went, fart sounds are a universal language.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Absolutely.
It breaks barriers, man.
That's great.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and be sure to give us a 5-star rating. And if you like this episode, please share this. It helps with exposure, and more people can hear the great content that we put out there every week. And if you want to find us on social media, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. That's at the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. And you can always send us a private message on one of those channels, and we'll be sure to get back to you if you guys want to hear about another, give us an episode idea, or you want to give us feedback, whatever you'd like to do, or you just want to share a testimony about how you've been impacted by one of our guests or something that you heard on an episode. We would love to hear from you. All right? Until next time, have a great day.